All right, we're going to get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's RIT Gold webinar, Graduated and Grounded. Thanks for joining us, whether it's your lunch break or the beginning of the morning for you. I just want to thank you for being here. My name is Kaya, and I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement here at RIT. This exclusive webinar session was designed specifically for graduates of the last decade. I personally know how challenging it can be to build healthy habits without all of the resources you had as a student at RIT. Your mental and physical health affect every aspect of your life, so it's very important to take time to build the habits that better yourself. Now that you have graduated, we hope that you stay connected through the RIT Alumni Association social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X, where you can find all of the up-to-date communications and opportunities about what's happening at RIT. To view our social media channels, please click the links in the chat box. You can access the chat box by clicking on the chat icon in the bottom of your webinar window. Just to go over a few housekeeping things before we enjoy today's presentation. If you are joining from a remote location and are currently signed into your company's VPN, we encourage you to close that channel during the webinar to increase the quality of the webinar transmission. Don't worry, the webinar platform is secure and does not require VPN access. All attendees have joined in mute mode. However, your questions for Brianna can be entered in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen at any time throughout the presentation. We will make an effort to address all your comments and questions throughout the webinar, and we'll also have an allotted time at the end to answer all of your questions. I would also like to thank our interpreters, Jen and Philip, for being here today. They will be pinned during the entirety of the webinar. Now, on to our presentation. We are very happy to welcome RIT alumni Brianna Williams. Brianna graduated from RIT in 2017 with a degree in nutrition management. She has a large breadth of experience working as dietitian, group fitness instructor, and is currently the program coordination specialist at the University of Northern Colorado, while also pursuing her master's degree in sports and exercise. Now that you have graduated, like I said, it can be challenging to find time to focus on your mental and physical health while dealing with the demands from your real and developing lives. Brianna is going to use her knowledge and experience within the health and wellness fields to help create the best and healthiest version of yourself. So now I will give the floor to Brianna and let her share some tips and tricks.
Thank you, Kaya. I appreciate that introduction, and thank you everyone for being here. So if you have recently graduated, you may be thinking, well, now what? Well, we're here to discuss wellness post-graduation. So as Kaya mentioned, my name's Brianna, and I'm tuning in from the University of Northern Colorado. A little bit more about me. I grew up in a place called Rochester, New York. You may have heard of it. I made a huge move down the street to RIT, where I completed my nutrition degree. Afterwards, moved to Baltimore, where I matched at my internship at Johns Hopkins. That is where I started my career. So I was at Hopkins Hospital for 5 years. My specialties were cystic fibrosis, cancer, prescribing tube feed and IV nutrition in the ICU, and treating COVID patients on life support, including mechanical ventilation and ECMO. After that, I made a slightly larger move to the University of Northern Colorado, where I coordinate our graduate dietetic internship program. So if you work in the health or food service realm and are interested in hosting an intern for unpaid internship hours, please email me to connect. My email's on the screen. So today, we'll be talking about the physical aspects of wellness, nutrition, and fitness. We've chosen this topic because when you had Tiger Bucks, Gracie's, the Gordon Field House, you may not have had to put much effort into obtaining food and access to physical activity. So that's what we'll discuss. Objectives are on the screen, and I've listed our agenda items. In order to make this digestible, I've broken off a few bite-sized pieces to share. Now, a disclaimer, I practice under evidence-based scientific research. So much of my information will have references, but I've been specifically asked to share my experience. So some information I share will be what I've learned from my patients, my group fitness participants, and myself. And I just wanted to mention, this is designed for generally healthy adults. So if you've been given recommendations by your dietitian or physicians, obviously those recommendations trump anything that I advise you to do today. Okay, before we dive into content, I have a favor to ask all of you. So please come into this presentation with an open mind. Okay, I tell you this because if you don't have a sense of curiosity and an open mind, it'll be challenging to actually have behavior change on your end. So if I had information such as the one food that will make you live forever, or that I hold the secret to weight loss, I don't. And last I checked, there is no magic food nor secret to health. And if someone tells you that there is, I would encourage you to be cautious. So let's move forward with positivity and curiosity. My question for you today is to please reflect on one goal that you have related to your wellness. Keep thinking about this, and we will circle back at the end. So let's begin. Starting with food preferences. I love this topic because it's really the history and the evolution of this is so interesting. So in my opinion, foods that you like or dislike should not be part of your permanent identity, just your current state of being. There is research demonstrating that our acceptance of various foods very much changes throughout life. A couple of examples: bitter foods, arugula, dandelion greens, grapefruit. Acceptance of these tend to increase in adulthood when compared to childhood. Chances are you were not eating dandelion greens in your salad as a kid. You may have been eating dandelions on the soccer field, but that's a different topic. I bring this up as an example to encourage you to branch out. We enter dangerous territory when we stick to the same foods we've always eaten, especially when those foods are low in micronutrients, such as the bitter foods I just referenced, and high in sugar and salt. We are genetically wired to enjoy salt because it is an absolute requirement for a normally working body system, as is glucose, found in sugar and carbohydrates. Fortunately and unfortunately, we have salt and sugar readily available now, thus putting the onus on us not to overconsume those foods. We know that in excess, they can cause harm. We are also wired to dislike bitter foods out of survival and needing to avoid harm in our environment. Especially for a child who has little working knowledge of what to eat based on experience, they rely on their taste to hopefully not eat weeds in the garden or cleaning solutions in the cabinet. This is similar in pregnancy, during which taste changes, nausea and vomiting occur, which are unfortunate, but thought to protect the fetus from harmful substances, even those that may not have been harmful for a non-pregnant person. Nowadays, our food supply systems function in a way that take a lot of the question out for us. While our ancestors and our children rely on taste and smell to guide which foods to choose, based on which are most calorie dense and least toxic, as long as we're storing our food and preparing it properly, we can assume the food that we obtain is safe. So I'd encourage you to branch out and try new foods and retry foods that you once disliked. So knowing this, I invite you to, instead of using verbiage such as, I don't like mushrooms, rather say, I don't like mushrooms yet. That's what I say. Then if someone asks you what you mean by that, you can either say, well, I remember someone told me to say that once and I don't remember why. Or you can explain, this helps me keep an open mind. It opens curiosity in the conversation rather than closed-minded thinking. I can tell you that 10 years ago, if there was a hint of mushroom in a dish, I either wouldn't eat that dish or every mushroom would be picked out. Now, I don't love mushrooms yet, but if they are in a dish, I will gladly eat them. And thankfully too, because, fun fact, mushrooms are one of the few foods in which vitamin D is natively abundant. Fatty fish is another. But vitamin D is fortified in many foods. Anyway, food preferences. try and retry those foods, but you have to be open-minded. It's kind of like hypnosis. It doesn't work if you try to convince yourself that it won't. So before taking a bite, say, I am going to enjoy this. And if you don't, you don't. Try again in a few years or sooner with a different preparation method. Okay, now if you attended RIT, you may enjoy numbers. I don't know, just a guess. You may benefit from having the data and the facts. I know I certainly do. So I had a little fun with this. I actually went through all of the foods that I eat daily or weekly, and I determined if that was something that I would have eaten 10 years ago and 20 years ago. The difference is substantial, and it's not just because a change in taste occurred, rather a change in my mindset, willingness to be curious for things outside of my norm. I'm going to share some numbers with you, and I'm slightly embarrassed to share these, but I'm going to for the sake of education. Compared to the foods that I eat regularly today, 68% of those foods I did not like or I refused to try 20 years ago. I was eating fewer than 1/3 of my staple foods. You're probably thinking, well, how old were you? Like 2? No, I was 9, but I was still a child. So this is consistent with some of the published data. However, 10 years ago, still only eating about half of my usual foods. I didn't like half of the foods that I eat every day today. I was going on my 3rd year as a nutrition major, and I was still struggling to find ways to eat according to the dietary guidelines set forth by our country. I refused to eat more than 50% of the foods that today I consider to be a staple. Foods ranging from avocado and beans to oatmeal raisin cookies. So hopefully this helps imprint on your mind that we can change, but we have to be willing to make that change. So you may be here thinking, well, my problem is actually that I eat everything and too much of it. Okay, let's chat about healthy portion sizes and ways to keep those in check. Which brings me to the benefits of preparing food at home. As you may know, generally healthier, more cost-effective, and if you pre-portion your meals, it can help ensure that you're eating enough, but not more than you need. I recommend preparing a lunch and snacks, and maybe even a breakfast too, for every day of the week, or just work days, whether you go into a place of work or if you're staying home to care for family members or work remotely. Having food pre-portioned can be beneficial for a multitude of reasons. This is how my fridge looks on a Sunday. Because salads are my specialty, I've mastered a way to make them nutrient dense and delicious. So this is a few days worth of salads for myself, my partner, and one of our neighbors who we help from time to time. Doing this removes the thought that would be required each morning. And ultimately, some days we do choose to go out to eat instead of having the salad, but having them pre-made helps eliminate the morning stress of getting out of the house, or when I'm working from home, the midday stress of trying to work and prepare a meal simultaneously. If you are trying to eat enough throughout the day because you are trying to maintain or gain body mass, or you find yourself too hungry to get your work done, or so hungry when you finish working that you eat whatever is closest and easiest, planning ahead should help. Or if you're trying to eat less because you're finding that you're groggy from receiving a constant supply of caloric energy, or because you find yourself eating mindlessly and not hungry for meals, or because your goal is to reduce body fat, this should help that too. And again, even if your life doesn't bring you out of the house, you can still quote unquote pack lunch. I do this even on days when I'm not going into the research lab or to my office. Mind you, I'm not a fan of cooking, so preparing salads is the best way for me to ensure I meet my needs in a way that best meets my lifestyle. I'd encourage you to explore something similar. My last talking point is related to activity. don't have to be a treadmill person or a fan of weightlifting. There is so much more. This image is the University of Northern Colorado Rec Center, where we have a rock climbing wall, and it's just one of the many rock climbing options in our area. And probably yours too. Give that a try, or aerial yoga, pickleball, join a run club, or be that person in your friend group who says, who wants to go for a hike on Saturday instead of going to brunch, or in addition to. If you make this part of your weekly routine, it won't feel so challenging to get yourself up and moving. And inviting friends can help keep you accountable. To pull this all together, this presentation is not going to benefit you if we can't make some goals. So I'd encourage you to make a goal or two, or three, but not 15. Be smart. Goals that you believe you can reasonably attain. Generally, don't advise you to make several major changes all at once. Not only because you'll be less likely to stick with your goals, but your body may genuinely not be ready. If you start intaking huge amounts of fresh vegetables or dried fruits, your GI system may be screaming back at you if you're not used to that. So replace half of your meals with a salad instead of your whole meal, or start with just a small portion of dried fruit instead of, replacing an entire dessert with dried fruit. Same thing with starting an exercise regimen. In order to prevent major soreness or even injury, it's in your best interest to ease it. So let's spend a few minutes talking about example goals. I've listed some goals here that, although it's perfectly reasonable to want to establish a healthy weight and diet, these goals have no specificity. Make your goal something that's more of an action item. That way, if you fail to meet your goal in the time frame that you've allotted, you can make specific adjustments. Plus, I'm not a fan of weight loss goals for most people. I think weight can be one determinant of our health, but in most instances, should not be the focus. So try one of these. Pack a lunch and snacks 3 days next week, even if your job consists of caring for a family at home or working remotely. Add a vegetable. This could be in your morning eggs. You may already add peppers and onions. Add broccoli or spinach, or put arugula on your sandwich. Or instead of making chicken and rice stir fry, try replacing half of that chicken with frozen or fresh vegetables. Try or retry a food each week this month. Either a food you've never eaten or a food you don't like yet. Prepare it in a way you haven't already tried. If you don't like broccoli and eggs, try raw broccoli, but with a different dressing. I received an email that there is a cooking class on Saturday if you still live in upstate New York. And if you don't, I certainly have found cooking classes every place that I have lived. And it's a fun activity to do with a friend and will equip you with skills to be successful in the kitchen. I took food production classes at RIT, and I still find it useful to attend cooking class and learn new techniques. See if your gym allows guest passes, or ask your friends if theirs do. You don't have to get a membership to attend classes at a lot of places. And, if you're not ready to make a 12-month commitment, then don't. But if by committing to a membership will hold you accountable, then by all means, sign up for that 12-month commitment and do your best to make short-term goals along the way. Drink more water. Fluid needs are dependent upon a multitude of factors. But one quick way that you can figure out about how many ounces of water you need is by taking your body weight in pounds and dividing that by 2. So if you're about 130 pounds, aim for about 65 ounces or just over 8 cups of water. Add some lemon or flavoring, or set a reminder on your phone to go off every few hours. Also, aim for water, not soda, energy drinks, or coffee with copious amounts of cream and flavoring. And on that note, if you're a morning latte person, ask the barista to put in just one pump of syrup instead of three. I don't mean to personally attack anyone there, but boy, does that sugar add up. Even if it's sugar-free, just a side note, that sweet flavor can increase your tolerance, so to speak, of sweet foods, thus making you crave them more. Also, when your body believes it's getting glucose because something tastes sweet, that can contribute to dysregulation of insulin and the endocrine system. So, aiming for just less sweetener overall. Greek yogurt is a great high protein, low fat replacement for mayo or sour cream. You can use it to make ranch dressing, chip dip, or to put in tuna or chicken salad. So I love dessert. My favorite dessert is ice cream, which I would eat every night. But I've transformed it into a high potassium and high fiber treat, which is so simple. I freeze bananas. I take them out for about a half hour to let them thaw. I blend them with chocolate chips. Delicious. The other dessert that I love is like gummy bears and gummy worms. So I've replaced that with dried fruit, and I encourage you to try. The last kind of like goal or idea that I have for you is to seek guidance from an RDN. There are companies such as Fay, F-A-Y, and Nourish, among others, that offer virtual nutrition counseling that do take insurance. Your gym, your place of work, or your medical provider may also be able to provide suggestions. Some of these goals I have specified the frequency and some I haven't, so I'll leave those specifics up to you. But I wanted to make a note that I want you to be able to reflect with grace on yourself if you fail to meet your goal. And I'm using the term fail because it's the term to be used here. It's not meant to have that negative connotation. But reflect on why you didn't meet it. Is it because you are a failure? No. If all of this were easy, everyone would be doing it. So reflect with curiosity, not judgment. Did I not pack my lunch because my lunchbox is too small? And my apple always falls out on the floor of the bus that I take to work? Been there. Am I not exercising? Because if I did, I'd have to go to bed later, or I'd miss dinner with my family, or I wouldn't have enough time to pack lunch for the next day. Been there. Am I not incorporating vegetables because the fresh vegetables I bought went bad before I could use them? Been there. Reflect with curiosity and adjust your goal. Treat yourself to a lunchbox. Allow yourself to use frozen vegetables if you don't have reliable access to fresh ones. Give yourself grace to give up on that goal temporarily and put mental energy into a new, more realistic, and possibly just as important goal. And if you meet your goal with no problems, fabulous. You've just created yourself a long-term goal of maintaining whatever it is you chose to focus on short-term. Then go ahead and make another short-term goal. I also wanted to mention that generally, cutting something out cold turkey doesn't work for most people. For example, I love bacon. You weren't expecting to hear that, were you? I'm an expert in nutrition, and I can almost conclusively say that bacon is not the best protein choice. So it's important to me that I decrease my bacon intake for environmental, ethical, and health reasons with such high saturated fat and sodium. So instead of giving it up completely, I use it to make my salads more tasty, or I cook it with Brussels sprouts, a vegetable that I do not enjoy eating unless it's got something good in it, like bacon. So whatever your bacon is, whether it's chocolate or ranch dressing, something that you quite frankly refuse to do without, unless you're allergic to it, you probably don't need to cut it out completely, but just make it a treat, not a go-to. Now, think back to the goal that you had at the beginning. If you feel comfortable sharing with the group, you're welcome to type that into the chat. Or if you have thus, since the beginning, determined that that goal is not the best goal for you and you've since changed that goal, you're welcome to share that too. I'm going to go back to that other slide so that way you're welcome to take word for word one of these goals here, or at the very least, write it down so that you know what your goal is after this presentation. Moving forward, I'm hopeful that you will remain open-minded about topics that we discussed today and be gentle on yourself as we move forward with those goals. I have several references listed here. And as I mentioned, if you work in the health, food service, or medical field and are interested in hosting one of our interns, it's similar to a co-op, but without financial compensation for them, email the address displayed on the screen. Or if you'd like to learn more about what I do as a dietitian or even how to become a dietitian. Also, if you just have general questions, general, I say, because I can't answer really specific health-related questions in this setting. I would also love to say thank you now to the RIT Alumni Engagement Group and Kaya for hosting this event, as well as to my RIT professors and mentors, some of whom are here today, especially Doctors Liz Reuter and Liz Kimizinski. I am so grateful for your support, and I am so thankful to be here today.
Thanks, Brianna. That was awesome. A lot of good tips and helpful information. Um, a couple questions that we had. I know a lot of people talk about 10K steps, getting your steps in throughout the day. And I think myself, along with a lot of others, struggle with that because if you're sitting at a desk all day, or you have a job, or you maybe have a physical disability that doesn't enable you to be able to make those 10K steps, what advice do you give people to be able to do that, or some workarounds to that?
Sure. I don't track steps personally. I'm not one that has like a Fitbit or a watch of any kind because my preference is to move as I feel comfortable moving. But if that's your goal, then I believe that there are some conversions of like if you attend a Zumba class or a cycling class, you may not be walking per se, but you're still getting exercise. And I think that there's some sort of conversion that you can do, whether it's using your watch or your phone. But I would encourage, if you're struggling to just walk throughout the day, then the times that you do have an opportunity to exercise, to maybe make those slightly more intense exercise. And if you're unable to walk, there are so many exercises that you can do seated, both at home as well as at the gym. And a lot of gyms will have like classes like chair yoga and things that are friendly for people who maybe can't be on their feet. I know me personally, I'm currently standing. I'm grateful to have a standing desk. And so I rarely sit down. And although my current job doesn't require a lot of walking, I am not sitting really ever. So the standing allows me to work on my posture. And a lot of times I'm moving my feet. You can't tell, but I'm, moving my feet back and forth to get blood moving. And that's what works for me. But if like the 10K steps is your goal, I would encourage you to maybe ask a coworker, a family member, or a neighbor, can we do a lunchtime walk or like a move and meet? So a lot of times with my colleagues or my students, we plan a walk instead of a sit down meeting. If it's something that we don't require a presentation or to take diligent notes, we walk and talk. And or even over the phone, we'll have walking and talking conversations so that we're not in the same place all day.
Yeah, that's great. I think having a standing desk too has really made a difference. It's a little bit of a game changer. Another question that we have is, do you take any or know of any vitamins or supplements that you would recommend for overall health? Maybe things
Mm.
people aren't typically getting on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, the supplement question. There are more supplements than I can even keep track of these days. So I'm hesitant to answer that because everyone is very different. So again, I'm going to assume you are a healthy person that doesn't have kidney disease or, hemochromatosis, or sorry to the interpreter, Uh, um, you know, I am not a huge fan of supplements because we can get a lot of that from our diet. With that said, I did mention vitamin D. That is one that we are typically lacking. I just so happen to be doing a research study right now, evaluating vitamin D. And based on my findings that are not published yet, but also the findings that are in a lot of the research, most of us are lacking vitamin D based on the guidelines set forth. So that is one that I would say is generally safe at the levels that it's sold at. So usually I wouldn't go more than 1,000 or 2,000 IU's per day for most people, especially if you're someone who doesn't eat dairy or fortified vitamin D foods and who lives in a place, maybe Rochester, New York, that lacks sun exposure. Other than that, usually there's not a harm in taking a daily multivitamin. Just keep in mind that supplements are generally not FDA approved, and a lot of times the claims that they have, although backed by research in some capacity, they're very much claims and not facts. So when you see the front of the label and it says, may support digestive health, or like there are vitamins that are like quote unquote stress vitamins. And I'll say in the ICU, we would use our quote unquote stress vitamins, but they were for like septic shock type stress, not like I have so much work to do stress. So yeah. We could do like an entire series on just supplements, but that's where I'll leave it for now.
Thank you for that. I think we probably have time for one more question. So, are there any common myths about dieting and nutrition or even fitness that you would like to debunk?
Oh gosh, are there ever? Whew. Okay, let me think of just one. Are any common myths? Ooh, okay. I think a big one these days is the ketogenic diet, which again could be an entire course. One thing that I want to say is that the ketogenic diet can be useful for diseases such as epilepsy, and there is research being done on Alzheimer's prevention and treatment as well. What I want to say about the ketogenic diet is if you are interested in following that, it requires a very strict diet. So although there can be benefits to being in ketosis, it's not like a let me eat some more vegetables. It's like a let me completely change the way my diet looks and my lifestyle because I can no longer go out to eat with my friends, probably because if you're following it at a true ketogenic ratio, most restaurants and even packaged foods that are quote unquote keto friendly are really not going to do it for you. So that's one that people who like or get a packaged snack that's like a keto snack. Like it's going to be high in fat. And if you're eating high fat without following the diet, as it's meant to be followed, you're not really getting any benefits. You're just getting the harms of more fat, which is well established that is connected to cardiovascular disease, among other things. So that is one thing that I would like to debunk, I guess, because that's been around now for several years, and I've heard a lot of people kind of like halving the keto diet, and it's just there's no point to doing that, in my opinion, and in my experience, unless it happened to work for you, in which case I hope that you're not deficient in any major micronutrients.
Thank you. I think we'll start to wrap up. I would like to thank you, Brianna, for being here today. I know you have a super busy schedule being in grad school, and working. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. It was super helpful. I think there were a lot of great takeaways from your presentation. If anyone has any additional questions, you can email me or you can email retalum@ret.edu and we will direct your questions to Brianna. And I wanted to let you all know about a couple events that we do have coming up. We have, like Brianna mentioned, we have a cooking class that we're hosting with New York Kitchen this Saturday at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. It is knife skills and quick pickling. So that would be super fun. The link to register for that is in the chat box, as well as another webinar we have coming up on April 9th. For all RIT alumni, this webinar will be hosted by Dr. Katrina Overby from RIT School of Communication. She will be educating us on the art of public speaking. So the link for both of those events will be in the chat box to register. I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you guys again soon.
Thank you, Kaya. Thank you to our interpreters, and thank you again to the RIT Alumni Association.